is Dr. Jeff Camarda, and I wanted to kind of mix things up. Hopefully, you've enjoyed the videos that the Personal Wealth Advisor staff, our senior PWAs, Jen and Lou and Blake have been doing for you. And I know some of you missed dear brother Jonathan, and hopefully he'll be in the rotation. But our objective, by the way, is kind of to give you different, with some variety in the video presentation, some, high level of technical information, some more digestible, and kind of mix it up. So thanks for giving your PWAs the feedback that you have, and keep it coming. This is all about what you want and what is good. And so we're tailoring the programming to you as best we can understand what you want from us. So please be vocal. All right, so I want to talk today about interest rates, right? And so much really rides on interest rates in the U.S. economy. And as you know, I have for a long time seen a number of storm clouds on the horizon, some of which we will visit in our Storm Watch aircraft here during the video. So to talk about interest rates, and a very popular misconception is when the Fed has an interest rate, discussion and the meeting minutes and so forth are circulated, what they're really talking about, which is a really, really small piece of the total interest rate equation that you really ought to appreciate, because a lot of folks don't. So when they do that, they're talking about the federal funds rate, which is really, really short-term interest rates, primarily having to do with banks borrowing from each other and borrowing from the Fed and so forth. But it sets the tone, but it doesn't have as much economic substance into mortgage rates and other debt and government debt rates, federal, of treasury bond rates and so forth. It really just doesn't. And then one of the things, gee whiz, mortgage rates, as I record this, are still over 7%. Why is that? Because the Fed hadn't raised the federal funds rate nearly that much, and these are much longer. So anyway, I want to kind of demystify this, and so you have a better understanding, and also maybe context on why rates, I think, are probably poised to go up. The real rates, the ones you care about, are poised to go up for the long term, which means this is probably a pretty bad time to be invested in bonds and some other stuff and annuities. All right. So, and these slides are drawn from the long webinar that I did a few months ago, which you should watch, by the way, on retirement. It was called How to Avoid Common Traps to Protect Your Retirement. And this is just a piece that really bears on interest rates. All right. So the first thing is that interest rates are set by the market, basically. People buying bonds or lending money and what they're going to charge and what return I would require if I'm going to be a bondholder. That's what sets the rates that really matter to most of us in terms of investing your money or borrowing your money, right? Longer term than just a few months with federal funds rates or T-bill rates. And the Fed doesn't influence those to the extent that you might think with their typical meetings. There's something called open market operations. Lately, they refer to it as quantitative easing or quantitative tightening. But basically, what happens if the Fed wants to reduce long-term rates and have some influence, and it's just one player in a very complicated market, they don't have a lock on it, they will go out and buy long-term bonds. And when demand goes up, the price goes up, and the price for bonds goes up, the interest rate the bonds pay goes down. And they do this by printing money. So there's called expanding the balance sheet. So when they want to influence longer term rates, they're out there buying or selling along with trillions of dollars of other market participants in U.S. government debt to try to have a little bit of an impact. And they're doing that by expanding the money supply, basically printing money. And I'm going to take a shovel of money, I'm going to buy a bond. Now you got cash, and the federal government books the bond on their balance sheet. Or by selling bonds, flooding the market, taking that cash back in and reducing the money supply. I know it's pretty Byzantine. But these are, some local concerns, because as we look at where things are going with the federal debt, being driven by the fact that Social Security and Medicare are fixing to blow up. They may find a solution to it, but the solution inevitably, any way you look at it, is going to have to be more government debt to borrow more money, plus tax increases, but that won't be enough in order to shovel money into a system that's going to be bleeding for the rest of the century, probably. And these, I'm not going to dwell too much on these graphs, but this is not breaking news. This has been coming for decades, right? And really the only solutions are borrowing more money, which is a lock, and taxing folks like you, the fat cats that invest with Camarda Wealth, and others that are watching this information. And the money comes from affluent families for the most part, not corporations, right? So without getting too much into the tax, my beating the tax drum, which is one of my favorite instruments, but not for today. Taxes will go up, and more importantly, the reason is because government debt is going through the roof, right? So if we look at where the debt trend has been just since the Clinton administration, where it actually went down for a while in the 90s, it's been going up at a pretty prodigious rate since then. And that's just a short-term trend. If we look at the long-term trend, this goes back to 1900. It's been 125 years, I guess, 1.25 century. And you can see that it's as a percentage of gross domestic product, the rest of this product, the total economic output of the U.S. economy, it's been going up pretty bad. World War II was an amazingly expensive, exercise to pay for. Highest debt on the record until recently, right? It was here at a little bit over 100% of GDP. And then it went down as, we paid for the war and we had the economic expansion of most of the 20th century. And then we got to giving away all that free money during COVID, the pandemic. That's where we were. And it's projected to, that's at about the level of World War II's record debt and projected to double from here. And the issue really is, they're not taxing enough, but you can only tax so much, is just borrowing and spend it. The net interest, and this is a really, big one. And part of my thesis for this video is that as government debt accumulates, right, more and more debt, just the interest on the debt, paying it, if we're paying at a little bit higher percentage, on trillions of dollars of debt, that just increases the debt even more. It becomes a snowball kind of effect. And looking at what that could do in some scenario analysis going forward, as annual interest on the federal debt, is the $1 trillion, it goes up relatively quickly. So, the conclusion here, and I don't want to bore you too much with a lot of technical details, is that for a lot of reasons, government debt is becoming very, very much untenable. And what does that mean? That means interest rates almost certainly will go up as the debt supply expands, the government debt, or the bond supply, treasury bonds that are issued, which is basically IOUs to the public that are giving money, lending money to the government. As the national debt expands, it becomes more and more and more expensive to maintain, which means that it becomes harder and harder to borrow money because there's so much of it in this, the supply and demand kind of thing, and interest that is demanded to be paid on that debt just goes up and up. It's really a frightening scenario. Anyway, so the long-term prediction that I'm making here, and one that I hope that you keep dear to your hearts, is that just regardless of the news that you see about what the Fed meetings are this year and next year and so forth, it's really just the federal funds rate, which is a very small part of the overall interest rate picture. The big picture is driven by government debt, tax and spend, or borrow and spend, and expanding, and there's really no appetite yet on either side of the aisle to reduce the debt and to stop these entitlement and other spending programs. It just looks like the train is out of control, which means that far from rates going down, the rates that matter for car loans, for mortgages, and what you can get if you invest your money in bonds looks, in my view, to be going up, to more at least to more historically normal levels, and 8%, maybe 7 or 8% for the long term. So those of you that are holding bonds, hoping for rates to go down, and again, federal funds rate, very short term, bonds that you have go out 10, 20, 30 years, long term, completely different, apples to oranges. Those of you that are waiting for rates to drop to make investment decisions, might want to reconsider that. Hopefully this was helpful to you, and I thank you so much for watching. Until next time, this is Jeff Camarda signing off for the moment. Have a great rest of your day and a very, very profitable and pleasant tomorrow.